back to another episode of Issue by Issue Crisis, a DC Comics completionist podcast, the only podcast around that's going issue by issue through the DC Comics universe, starting from Crisis on Infinite Earths #1. Hey everybody, welcome back. Hopefully it sounds okay. I still think it's echoey as all get out, but I think that sometimes you just have to go with it. Sometimes things aren't going to work out as you want. I would love to, cover all these walls in foam and have a completely pure sound environment, but unfortunately, I am but a guy trying to make it in this economy, so I can't spend all my money on sonic dampeners. So I did my best. I got some, obviously not enough, but hopefully enough to make it at least not murder on your ears to listen to. So now we're in business. Now I know that I promised at the beginning of the year, but now we should be good. There shouldn't be anything keeping us from recording on a regular basis and releasing on a regular basis. So let's get into today's episode. Today's episode will be covering World's Finest Comic number 314, little Batman Superman action in that. Crisis on Infinite Earths #2, that's right, we've made it 1 month. It only took us 10 episodes, but we made it 1 month in 1985. Wonderful. So we'll continue the story in Crisis on Infinite Earths, find out what's going on there, probably a bunch of devastated multiverse worlds. And then finally we have DC Comics Presents #81, which is a little ambush bug and Superman action. They're going up against Cobra with a K. So I don't believe that is spelled the same way as Cobra from G.I. Joe. So that'll be exciting. But as always, let's talk about the real world history that was happening when these issues were on the shelves or getting put on shelves, one way or the other. So January 28th, the charity single record We Are the World is recorded by USA for Africa. This is the first of the We Are the World special recordings with numerous artists, Michael Jackson being the main one, and then numerous other well-known musicians of the time recording the song We Are the World and donating the proceeds to Africa. I didn't look into what that means, and is it the entire continent of Africa, and how do you divide that up? Do you divide it by country? Because that feels like the proceeds probably won't go that far. But that's the first one. From my time as a teenager, I remember We Are the World recorded for Haiti after the earthquake that ravaged Haiti back in the 2010s, I believe. I'm not sure which year specifically, but that's when it was, I believe. Either that or 2008. I'm not sure. 2007? I don't know. I didn't look it up because we're not in 2007. January 29th, Margaret Thatcher becomes the first post-war prime minister to be publicly refused an honorary degree by Oxford University. Margaret Thatcher, a very divisive character in history, especially British history, as prime minister. I believe the first female prime minister. Not the last, obviously, but certainly one of the most divisive male or female prime ministers to ever happen for England. January 30th, the Canadian federal government relaxed its laws requiring businesses to use the metric system. Obviously, Canada was a part of the Commonwealth. I don't believe at this time it still was, but it was part of the British Commonwealth, so a lot of its laws and stuff are based on British laws. But it no longer being part of the Commonwealth and being so close to America, sharing its largest border, I believe, with America, it decided to relax its sort of strict requirements for the metric system to allow the imperial system to also be used, which is what we use here in America. And finally, February 4th, the border between Gibraltar and Spain reopens for the first time since Francisco Franco closed it in 1969. So that's about 16 years before this. So, and if you don't know Gibraltar, it's a little tiny island, the Rock of Gibraltar. It is in the Mediterranean. I believe it is a part It is in the middle of the narrowest portion of the Mediterranean, and it is sort of the border between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. The Greeks, I believe, called it the Gates of Hercules, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken. I'm not an expert on that. But it is very much like a harbinger of like, here's the Atlantic Ocean. And it's not very far from Spain. Very, very few miles away off coast. So to have the border closed between it is a pretty big deal. And that is all of the little tidbits and factoids of what was going on in 1985 around January 24th to January 7th, which is when all of these issues come out. So let's get into our first issue, which is, as I said, World's Finest Comics number 314, released January 24th, 1985, with a cover date of April 1985. There's kind of a debut in this one, although it's I believe, one-off character that doesn't make a return ever, and if so, it's in a ways in the future. The executioner, but then dominatrix, and you sort of portmanteau them together. It depending on how you pronounce it, it either sounds like what it means, like an executioner, female version of an executioner, or an executive assistant robot from the future, like something they'd have on the Jetsons. Executrix, it copies, it collates, it calls and lies to your wife about a long business meeting when in reality you're hitting the golf course with your buddies or having an illicit affair. So she's an assassin. Let's just straightforward. She's an assassin come to kill some guys, and she happens to bump into Superman and Batman, so she'll be the antagonist for this issue. On the production side, this issue was written by Joe Cavalieri, penciled by Stan Woch, W-O-C-H, inked by Alfred P. Alcala, lettered by Duncan Andrews, and colored by Nancy Houlihan. So let's get into it. As always, let's start with the cover. It shows the executrix, because executioner, executrix. Okay. She is holding the capes of Superman and Batman as if she has defeated them, which, laughable. She's just a person. Like, she has no powers or anything. So the fact that she could beat Superman without kryptonite and Batman, pretty low. Pretty low. She's wearing a red costume, although in the story itself, they say it's black. But this one has a lot of red on it to be black, so I'm thinking it's red. She also has red hair. It's up in a bun because she's busy. She doesn't need hair on her face because she is working. So she's got it up in a bun, a classic technique for keeping hair out of your face. I wouldn't know because I don't have any, but women and men with long hair would know that a bun is very useful. So let's get to the story itself, shall we? We'll stop talking about buns and their usefulness. We open the issue, on two men who we've never met before, who don't really have names and aren't really important after the story. They are meeting on the top of the GBS building, the news company that Clark Kent works for as an on-screen reporter. A man in a yellow suit is talking to presumably a reporter. I mean, I know he's a reporter, but just from the look at him, you think, oh, this dude works for a newspaper. He's wearing what appear to be jeans. He's wearing a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to the mid-forearm. He's wearing it looks purple, like a purple vest and a blue tie. And it just screams, I'm a reporter, I work at a newspaper. And I don't know why. It just, that's the vibe it gives off. And the man in the yellow suit is very nervous because he's the one who asked for this open air conference on top of this building because he is worried that someone is after him for the stuff that he knows. So he is telling the reporter the stuff that he knows in the presumed privacy of this rooftop in the middle of the night. So sometime later, we see the reporter walking through an empty parking lot to what appears to be an 80s era Corvette, which is a very, very fancy car for a reporter to be buying. So he must come from money. But he is thinking about the guy that he was talking to. He insisted that they leave separately and that they don't use the elevator for fear that whoever is following this guy, or whoever he thinks is following him, will stop the elevator and kill them. So they took the stairs. So he had to walk down a bunch of flight of stairs. It's a tall building, and he's finally getting back to his car. And he's adjusting the mirror like a proper driver. You get into the car, you check your mirrors first, and in it he sees a woman standing behind his car. And he looks out his window and says, "Are you lost? And if you need a ride, you might as well get in. You won't find a cab this hour of the..." And he's suddenly cut off by machine gun fire from this woman who's holding a machine gun and shooting it at him in his car. And she pulls out his notebook and says, "That's one story that won't see the light of day. Too bad I didn't get that gutter rat Page, who was the man in the yellow suit. 2, that would have completed the job. I could collect and go home," because she's a hired gun. She's a hired assassin. So she knows the story that Page has told this reporter, and she has gotten the reporter with a bunch of bullets. And we see the title of this issue, and it's called "Gotham Bridge is Falling Down." Because this story has to do with steel, and a poorly made steel, and its involvement with construction. So we cut to the next morning, and we see Clark Kent going to a news event, a press conference, if you will, outside of the new Gotham Bridge. And he is meeting up with his new camera person, who is seeing why Clark is so difficult to work with, because he's always late, because he's always out doing Superman stuff. And I would like to comment on the art here at this point in time. The art is weird in this one. I don't really see Clark Kent in these images of Clark Kent. He doesn't really look like Clark Kent. And when he becomes Superman, he doesn't really look like Superman. In the face, mostly. The body is, of course, it just looks like a body. But the face really doesn't look like Clark Kent at all. So that's just really interesting to me. We then cut to Wayne Manor, and Bruce is watching this press conference about this opening of this bridge on television. And his, I presume, girlfriend, lover, casual hookup, although he does take her out to a party, so I would assume that they're in some sort of relationship. I don't think he says her name at this point, so we're just gonna. She's a redhead. She's got very long hair, so we're just gonna call her Redhead. We're gonna call her Red. And I know redheads out there hate that, but I'm going to call her Red. She says, "Honestly, Bruce, a bridge opening. Some women lose their men to ball games, but this is about as exciting as watching bread mold." Which, if you speed up the process, bread mold, like actually happening, is very interesting to watch. So, and Bruce says, "Oh, it only seems dull. It's a lot of hard work that went into the process, and Wayne Design Group spent like 6 months engineering this support system for this bridge. So it's a part of his business portfolio is this bridge." And so he's excited to watch this press conference. And Red is like, "Well, big deal. Who wants to go to Ferris County, which is where this bridge goes to? You sound like a kid with a new erector set," which if you've ever had an erector set, they're very cool. You can build all sorts of stuff with that stuff. We then cut to the person who is, giving the speech about opening the Gotham Bridge, and he cuts the ribbon when suddenly behind him a plane starts falling out of the sky, and it looks like it's going to crash. Lots of black smoke is coming out of it, and of course, Clark is like, "I gotta go. I'll be right back." And his camera person's like, "What? Where are you going?" And he's like, "I gotta get back to the van to get you more tape," because it's 1985, so they record on tape. When in reality, of course, we know that Clark Kent is going to take off his suit and reveal his Superman costume and fly up there. As he's flying up there, the wing of this plane just busts clean off. It's a very clean break. Just busts right off. So he is now, instead of doing a slow, like a crashing descent, which you can sometimes land, at least survivably land, this is not going to end well. So Superman grabs the wing and reattaches it with his heat vision, and then sort of flies the plane to a safe landing. We then cut to that night at Gotham Tower, where Bruce has taken I'll just call her his girlfriend, to a party celebrating the opening of the bridge. And so they're mingling, and as Bruce is walking, or they're not mingling, they're about to go mingle, when Paige, the man in the yellow suit, runs up to the doorman and says, "Mr. Bruce Wayne, Mr. Wayne, Bruce." And the doorman tries to stop him, but Bruce is like, "It's fine, I know this guy, Ron Page, right? Are you still working at Metro Steel?" Which I would assume is a Metropolis Steel Company, because I can put two and two together. And Paige says, "No, I'm not. That's what I wanted to talk to you about." We then cut to Clark and his camera person, and she is saying that that plane crash could have been really good news, but you had to run out like that. And she's and Clark's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But covering a society party should be a lot tamer than apparently a bridge opening. So he shouldn't have to run off, he hopes. When suddenly there's a loud sound coming from the building. And they do this a lot in movies, like when the frame of a building is coming under like stress, there's like that noise that like I can't make it well with my mouth. I'm not the guy from Police Academy, but there you know the sound, like in I'm blanking on any other movie where it happens, but like in Poseidon, which is the movie about that ship that gets flipped over upside down by a rogue wave, like when the water pressure, or like in movies where there's submarines and the pressure is too much, like there's that sound of the pressure kind of getting to the frame, and that sound happens in the ballroom of the Gotham Tower. And what happens is the glass sort of atrium that is going, or skylight that is going over the top of this ballroom, you would presume is what it is, at the top of the tower, the steel frame of it just snaps under its own weight, and glass and steel showers down upon the partygoers in their fancy attire. And Clark pretends like he's too scared. He doesn't want to get hit by glass and steel, so he runs into the kitchen and becomes Superman as he does, and flies back out really fast and freezes. I guess this is not very straightforward how he does this, because there's no water. He freezes the air, I guess, around the glass panels and the steel supports, so that he can gather them up and repair the roof with his heat vision. So we then cut to Ron Page, who in all the commotion got separated from Bruce Wayne. And behind him we see Executrix holding a gun, aiming at him, ready to shoot him. We then cut to Bruce and his girlfriend, who hear it. Oh, it's Lillian. Well, I thought it was Lillian, which makes more sense, but it's Lilanne. Lillian. Maybe she's a rapper and she's Lillian, which I think would be funny, but I don't think it's Lillian. It doesn't even roll off the tongue well. You can't even pronounce it well. Lillian. So Bruce runs off and he says that he's going to go alert somebody to help, and then he jumps into a limousine that's waiting. It's presumably his own, because the person in the front says, "I thought you'd want me to bring the limousine around at the first sign of trouble," which presumably that's Alfred. But there's a weird sort of error in this panel. So it's presumed, we are presuming, we, the reader, are presuming that it's Bruce jumping in here so he can change into his Batman costume. But what we see is Superman sitting in the back seat. And he says, "Good man, Alfred, you," and then he's cut off, and he says, "1 second, that's Ron Page under attack. I just left him," which would imply that this is Bruce. But what we see Bruce wearing is, we see the arm, We see his arm, which is the light blue of Superman's costume. And then we see a cape on his back, which is red and has the Superman symbol on the back like Superman's. So it's a really weird error that it's shocking that no one caught. Like even the person drawing it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense that Superman would be in the back of this limo. So it's really weird. I'll be posting the panel for on the Instagram so that you can see it. It's just really weird, and it's not mentioned because in the next panel on the next page we see Batman swinging into action. He swings towards Executrix. Nope, that's the robot. Executrix. It's so hard to say. And he kicks the gun out of her hand into the fountain, presumably on the ground floor of the Gotham Tower. But before he can swing away, Executrix grabs his arm or his leg or something and sort of judo flips him into the fountain, and then pulls out an electric rod, like electric baton, that's, like, it's very electrified. It's not just like a little taser. It's like a very, very electrified. And she throws it into the fountain, but just in time, Batman jumps out, not being electrified and possibly dead. It's like throwing a toaster into the bathtub with you. Soon, which is, I guess, a few minutes later, we see Ron Page and Lil-Ann going into the room of a hotel room, not to have an illicit affair. Don't worry, there's no affair happening. But they're going into a suite that Bruce maintains here at the Gotham Tower, just in case he'll need it. And she tells Ron Page that he'll be safe in here, so that he can tell her and Bruce what it's all about, why he's being attacked by this assassin. And as they open the door, Batman is inside and he says, "Yeah, tell me too. I'm very interested in what this man has to say." And of course it's like, "Batman, is that really you?" Batman's like, "Yeah, of course it is. Start from the beginning." So Ron Page then lays out the story that we're assuming, told the reporter basically all this information as well, and that's what got the reporter killed. This kind of reminds me of, I just watched this movie, The Parallax View from 1978? I don't know. I can't remember when it came out, but it's with Warren Beatty, and it's basically about this conspiracy, this secret company that is like a conspiracy of sleeper agents and killing presidential candidates, and it's very interesting. And it kind of reminds me of this, because this Warren Beatty knows something's up, and so he's being chased, sort of. But back to the comic. Ron Page says that, Mr. Wayne knows me. I used to work at Metro Steel. The job had a lot of responsibility, a lot of decisions that I had to make. And one afternoon I came back from an executive lunch to find that that responsibility had been taken from him. Decisions that he'd made were being unmade. His superiors decided to go with a new, cheaper process in making steel, which will save the company millions. And of course, capitalistic society dictates that we must always increase profits, despite the consequences. So Ron Page says that the process, although it's cheaper, it also turns the steel brittle, making it basically useless and causing it to shatter after a very short time after it is fabricated. So Ron is anguished about this, and it's hard to fight this kind of decision because what's good for Metro is good for the economy because it employs a lot of people. It's one of those things with banks and the auto industry. They are too big to fail, because if they fail, there will be a economic crisis because so many people will be out of work that unemployment will go through the roof, and that'll be bad. So that's why companies like that get bailouts. So Ron Page says they started using the steel in planes, trains, and basically everything. But once the steel started to fail, they blamed the design of the thing it was being put into or the welding. But they knew it was their fault, and they paid a lot to keep it quiet, which is standard hush money. So Ron Page talks a little bit about real achievements are something that last, building something that lasts, endurance. That's what counted, or that's what counts. The pyramids, the Eiffel Tower, they're built to endure. So Ron was conflicted about this, and so he said that he knew that Bruce Wayne would understand. He's the only man that Ron Page would trust, and so he wants to work for Bruce Wayne, presumably at Wayne Design, or Wayne. There's probably Wayne Manufacturing. There's no way he's not involved in manufacturing in some way. He's involved with anything. He has so much money. So he wants to work there, even though it competes with Metro Steel, but Metro Steel would never let him, knowing what he knows. So they're trying to kill him before he can go to anyone. And Ron Page says, well, when the story breaks in tomorrow's Daily Planet, everyone will know then. But until then, I'll need protection. And Lil Ann suggests he stays here in the suite, and he says, no, if I stay in one place, I'm a sitting duck. I got to keep moving. And Lil Ann says, I could take you to Wayne Manor, but it's a question of how, with Bruce suddenly gone. I don't think she knows who Batman is, so that's good. Because I've never heard of her before, so I feel like if it's a girlfriend of Bruce's that knows he's Batman, I feel like we would have heard about her more. She suggests a private car, presumably Bruce's limousine, or a police escort, and Paige says, no, those seem like really tight spaces. Someone could easily just, kill him, in such a small space. And then Lil Ann suggests taking the Metrack, which is a play on Amtrak, but it's the Metropolis-based Amtrak equivalent, I guess. So her and Ron Page are going to go do that, going to go get a ticket for the train and head off to Wayne Tower, which I guess the train station is close to. So the next morning, Clark Kent comes into the office early, as he does, because Superman, I don't really think, needs to sleep, but I could be wrong. And he's like, oh, what are you guys doing here so early? And Lois, I think it's Lois. Is it implied it's Lois? I know that the man standing there is Jimmy, so I'm just going to assume that that's Lois standing next to Jimmy. And Lois says, you didn't get the call? And they say they found Casey Harrow, one of the Planet's Business Day reporters, shot in his own car downstairs in the parking lot. There's going to be a memorial service in GBS Studio C. And Clark is shocked. And this is one of the panels where it doesn't really, to me, look like Clark Kent. The art style in this issue is weird. Jimmy asks if Clark is coming, and he says he'll in a little while. And meanwhile, he's thinking about the murder, if it had anything to do with one of Harrow's recent assignments. Clark has the idea that if there is going to be a lead, it's going to be somewhere in Harrow's terminal, which is a precursor sort of thing to a computer. Or maybe just a really, really early computer, because I don't typically think they're called terminals anymore. Well, I guess maybe they are. But he's, punching, it's password protected. But Superman's like, if I just punch in every possible combination at super speed, I can discover his passcode and free the info. So there must not be a lockout. If you try too many times and fail, it locks your computer, like people used to do as pranks with people's iPods back in the day. They would just continually put in the wrong code until it was a crazy amount of time that it would be locked. So he gets in, and he sees that Harrow was working on a story about a defective steel alloy. And so Clark puts two and two together because Harrow has a bulleted list underneath of what this bad steel was used in. And he says Bright Comet plane, Gotham Tower skylight roof, Metrack train liner, and then it says Ferris County Caissons, Caissons, which has a double meaning. It's both a military, armament storage or something along those lines, but it's also the things that they sink into rivers to build bridges on top of. I had to look up what a caisson was. I did not know what it was. And Clark is thinking, a pattern. If it's running true to form, it wouldn't hurt to check on the Metrack. Now, I just want to stop for a second, because it wasn't shown that Harrow went back to his office after talking with Ron Page. And maybe he did, and it just wasn't mentioned. because I thought when reading this that he went from the roof down to his car and then was going to drive home, but he was obviously murdered. So I guess he must have left the roof, walked down the stairs to the floor that his office is on, went into his terminal, and typed in this information. Because otherwise, how would this information be on this computer? So I guess we just have to assume that he came down and typed it in there. Because otherwise, it's just a real plot hole about how it got there. We then cut to the Metrak Gotham station, where Leland and Paige are talking with Batman, and Leland tells him that they'll be on the second car from the front. And she asks where Batman will be, and he says, "I'll be around." And he's in like the shadows, and all you see is his hand reaching out. And it's very good. It's a very good image. He's like, "I'll be around." And Ron and Leland get on the train, and it says Metrak liner for Ferris County and points north, all aboard. And Ron is kind of griping about, "Oh, he'll be around, and I'll be dead." And Leland says, "Don't talk that way. I don't know much about the Batman, but I do know this. He speaks with authority. He's one of the few men I've met in this life who knows what he's talking about. And when he does talk, listen." So, and Ron says, "I am listening. All I hear are footsteps behind me because I'm paranoid." And Leland says, "Stop being paranoid." When they go through the door, we see a woman sitting in one of the seats that they walked past. And it is the executrix. I'm going to say that slowly. And she's thinking to herself, "I was unable to bring my more outre, O-U-T-R apostrophe E, weaponry aboard this train," obviously, because it's very ostentatious. It's a big gun. But by the time the train reaches its final destination, and she clicks open a switchblade, "That will little matter. I'll have achieved the same result with this, a knife, which is used to kill people or cut things." We then see Ron and Leland sitting in a row with a mother and her young son. And Batman is right outside the window looking in like a little creep. And he's thinking, I could put Paige in a private car against his wishes. It would keep him alive to testify against his employers. For me, that is not enough. It is merely treating a symptom. And Leland is telling Ron that they could have taken the limo. Alfred can be trusted. When suddenly the little boy, whose name is Jamie, points out the window and says, Batman, Batman. And his mom's like, yeah, Jamie, quiet, here's your comic book. Because I guess, do Batman comics exist in this universe? That's crazy. Batman's a real person. That's weird. The train is now coming up on Gotham Bridge, when suddenly the conductor and the engineer see that another train is on the same track and coming right for them. It should have switched over to the other track so that they wouldn't hit each other, obviously. That's how trains work. It'd be bad if there was only one line and you'd have to be like, oh, gotta back up because there's a train coming. So they see up ahead that the switch is broken. It's sort of like snapped in half. I wonder if that was made with Metro steel. Who knows? So they're panicking, like, what are we going to do? We got to think of something. The conductor he's like, I got to get out of here. I can't be here when this happens. When suddenly the train comes to an abrupt halt, and they see a hand outside the window, and it's the hand of Superman. He's stopping the train. He says, I would have arrived sooner, but I had to stop the other train, of course. And they're like, yeah, of course. We cut to Ron and Leland, and the car that they're in is really disheveled, obviously, because the train's coming to a abrupt stop. And Ron is going to be sick. Leland gives him some Dramamine for motion sickness. We then cut to Superman flying above. And he says, I shudder to think what would have happened if those trains would have collided on the Gotham Bridge. And he's like, wait, the bridge. When I looked at Harrow's file on Metro Steel, I just assumed Ferris County Kazons meant something military, but it really means that their defective steel has been used in something very different and vital, the Kazons of the Gotham Bridge. We cut to Ron Page. He's in the bathroom drinking a cup of water with these pills because this is the 1980s and they provided things like cups of water in the bathroom, I guess. And he's about to leave. Or, sorry, I should say there's a rapid knock on the door. Someone really has got to use the bathroom. And he's like, just give me a second. But who is outside that door? The executrix. And she gasses him in the face, knocking him out. And she drags him out of the bathroom, and the conductor asks, is something wrong? And she says, oh, he's not feeling well. I'm going to take him out for some air before the train starts moving again. We then cut to Superman, who has dived into, what is the river in Gotham called? Gotham River? I don't know. He's jumped into the river where the bridge is going over. And he has swum down to the bottom, and he sees the caisson that the bridge is built on. And he says the new solid steel caisson forms the foundation for one of the bridge's towers. From the looks of things, it's going to shatter, just like the Gotham Tower's skylight. And you can see it's got tons of huge cracks in it. Cracks that would only occur after decades, maybe hundreds of years of the bridge being there, not mere days, hours after it's completed. We cut back to the train, and Batman is running through the train. And he's asking about Page. He saw him get up. Where did he go? And the conductor says, oh, Mr. Page, a woman dressed in black escorted him off the train. He said he was sick. And Batman says, a strange woman in black who just happens to know Page's name, and you let him go off alone. And he's pointing at Leland. And there's a funny little moment where the mom of Jamie says, Batman? I mean, Batman? Because Jamie's a little boy. Or I don't know why I said a little boy. He's a little kid. And so he couldn't say Batman. So he said Batman. So his mom says Batman. So Batman rushes off, and Jamie yells after him, where Robin, Batman? Where is Robin? What's he doing? Oh, wait, we know what he's doing. He's hanging out with... Wait, no, we don't know where Robin is. Where is Robin? Because he's Jason Todd. Where's Jason Todd? He's not dead yet. Spoiler alert. He's not dead yet. We then cut to the executrix and Ron Page, and she's thinking, consider Superman to clear the bridge of all train and auto traffic. Now there will be no witnesses when I finish him off and pitch him into the Gotham River. It is the Gotham River. That's what it's called. It's called the Gotham River. Really, really creative. That'd be like if the East River was actually called the New York River. New York City River. Come on, writers. Call it something different. Batman, at this point in time, is running up behind the executrix, but she hears him, and she turns around. She's got her knife to Ron Page's neck, and she says, I contracted to make sure this man dies, Batman, and if you come near me, it'll only happen that much faster. I mean, why not just do it? Why sort of drag him out to the middle of this bridge to pitch him into the river? You don't have to go directly in the middle. Slit his throat and then just chuck him over. The current will deal with him. You're a bad assassin. So Batman's thinking, there's nothing I can do this way. So he I guess shoots his grappling hook and swings away. She's like, that's it, Batman. Turn tail with your cape between your legs. Which would be uncomfortable and not very useful for a cape. Although I don't really know what use capes have, other than to make Batman look very ominous and for Superman to make it look like he's flying. But Batman wasn't swinging away afraid. He was swinging around in a circle to get the jump on the executrix. And he does. He jumps down and he's going to throw a batarang at her. And he says, your employers knew this bridge would someday claim many lives. I won't let that death toll start with him. And she's, of course, shocked, like, where'd you come from? You swung away. And it's like, well, you're a bad assassin. You're just like, okay, good. I scared him away. I'm so scary. So we then cut to Superman, and he's still underwater, and he is sort of friction welding these cracks back together. So he's basically just moving the cracked pieces together, which causes enough friction for them to superheat, melting, and then cooling together. It's a thing that happens in real life. You can friction weld things together. It's very difficult. It's not easy, but you can do it. I mean, normal people can't, but there's technology out there that can do it. And so he's working as fast as he can. He can hear the bridge is in the process of about to collapse because he's hearing these loud rumbles. And he's going as fast as he can, sort of, fixing this Kazon. And we cut back up to the bridge itself, where the rumbling from down below has messed up, or presumably messed up, Batman's aim, because he throws the Batarang past the Executrix and Ron Page. And she's like, "Oh, you're so bad at your job, Batman. I'm going to kill him, and I'm going to do it whether or not you interfere because you're so bad at your job." And Batman says, "Well, think again. That Batarang was meant instead to wind a thin silken cord around your wrist and pin it to your back." Hey, from this image, I have no idea how this Batarang got in between her and Ron Page, because they are like touching back to front, because she's obviously holding him with a knife to his throat from behind him. So, but the image that the Batarang has is that it has put an entire rope around her entire arm and torso, mid-torso, and I don't know how it did that. So he's got her captured, but they fall backwards through the railing because of the shaking, because the bridge is, in the process of collapsing. And Ron Page grabs onto a piece of the railing, and the Executrix, with her one free arm, grabs onto Ron Page's coat. And Batman grabs onto Ron Page, and Executrix is like, this wasn't supposed to happen like this. Save me, save. And as she says "me," with a very long drawn out "me," Ron Page's coat rips, and she falls down into the Gotham River. And Ron Page says, It's over. That's the end of her." And Batman says, "Fitting. You can call it justice." Batman, you shouldn't be happy that she's dead. Don't call it justice. But don't worry, because Superman flies up from the river carrying the Executrix. And Superman says, "You might call it justice, Batman, but death doesn't fit my definition of the term. Life's precious no matter who it belongs to." Which, yeah, Batman, that's your whole thing too? You don't kill people? That's why the Joker's still alive. So I don't know why you're like, "Oh, good, she's dead, but I didn't do it, so it's fine." We then cut to a floating gold orb in space, and we see a blonde-haired woman and an unseen figure sitting in a chair. I will reveal to you that it is the Monitor and Lara? Yeah, Harbinger. The woman who comes Harbinger. Because all the issues that we've been covering, they all take place before Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though Crisis on Infinite Earths #1 is already happening. It's very confusing, and I don't know why they didn't plan better for it. Why not just wait until you wrap up all those other storylines? I guess probably because they still want books to be coming out while Crisis on Infinite Earths is happening. It's fair. Sales still need to stay up while you're doing this whole big reset of... And I guess, and then that way, once we get Crisis on Infinite Earths #12, then the issues can then start, from that point on, newer issues can start using and changing things based on Crisis on Infinite Earths. It makes sense, it's just kind of confusing. But that's why I'm here to explain it to you, so you're not confused. But the Monitor is... he's saying to Lila, it's not Lara, it's Lila, the Harbinger. He says, "I think we've discovered the weak link in this team. It's the Man of Steel and his real vulnerability, his compassion, his infinite capacity for mercy." And Lila says, "The last time we watched them at work together, you spoke of Batman and his similar weakness." And Monitor says, so I did. You see what I've been saying, Lila? It's little things like this one notices, subtle personality quirks within them that we can observe and use against them. Because at this point in time, before the Monitor is revealed to be a good guy, he is sort of masquerading as a villain. He's watching the heroes of these multiple different Earths as a quote-unquote villain. I guess as a cover for us, so we don't know who he is. And he says, there are people who will pay well for such observations, and we are in the best position to make them. For our vantage point is far superior to anyone else's. And Lila says, will there be anything else, Monitor? And Monitor says, yes, there was something else I wanted to watch. We then cut to the preset coordinates of what the Monitor wanted to watch. And we see a group of 3 people, I believe 2 women and 1 man, sitting around a table. And one of the women says, we thought you weren't going to show. Come on a little closer so the others can get a look at you. And we see a woman's silhouette in the darkness. And she says, no, the light hurts my eyes. And the man says, she just don't want us to look at her face. And the other woman says, she's probably a real dog, right? And suddenly this woman in the shadows flips the table and upends all the people sitting at it. It says, you jerks want to laugh? So go watch The Honeymooners. I'm here to do business, which I will say, the one joke that The Honeymooners, which is an old television show, has is domestic violence, which I don't personally find to be funny. So don't go watch The Honeymooners. It's a bad show. And she says, now listen to me. I'm telling you, I can give you this town. Just hand it right to you. You stick with me and no one will stop you. Not Superman, not the Batman, nobody. And then we see a final little blurb of words saying, strong words. Can this mysterious woman back them up? Find out next month when Joey and Stan turn on, quote unquote, the juice. And that's the end. And that's the end of World's Finest Comics number 314. I don't think that one is what you would call like a good example of what World's Finest was, because when I think of World's Finest, I think of Batman and Superman working together. And while in this story they were technically working on the same case, they weren't really working together at all. And in the end, they kind of seemed like Superman was like, "I'm ashamed of you, Batman, for being glad that this woman's dead." Which, like, yes, you should be. You should be ashamed of Batman for saying that, because that's not what Batman does. But it's World's Finest. It's basically, it's there to have the 2 heaviest hitters and the best sales characters in the DC Comics in one book, so that you can get double the bang for your buck. But I would have liked it if they would have worked together more instead of just working on the same case separately. So let's move on to Crisis on Infinite Earths number 2, released February 7th, 1985, with a cover date of May 1985. And we have a couple of debuts in this second issue of this 12-part maxi series. We have Anthro, who is debuted in Showcase number 74 on March 12th, 1968, and jumped immediately into his own series. Not a very long-running series, but still his own series, so that's something. He is the first human baby born in the Stone Age, and basically his story is of his adventures in the Stone Age as a cave boy and then eventually a caveman, and he gets married and he becomes the most well-regarded member of his tribe, his caveman tribe. So that's him. He is right at the beginning. He's not very important to the story, other than just like a fun little nod, fun little cameo for Anthro, because his series obviously ended, almost 20 years before this. So maybe probably like closer to 15 years before this. So a lot of the people reading this at the time probably didn't know who Anthro was. So and then second we have Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth. He debuted in Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth, number 1. On August 29th, 1972. He is one of the few human beings left on a post-apocalyptic Earth inhabited by anthropomorphic animals. And we'll learn something very weird about that Earth in this issue that I find is like very confusing and causes more questions than it sort of answers. And another little tidbit is that he was created by the great Jack Kirby of Marvel and Fourth World fame. So, on the production side, of course, just like the first one, written by Marv Wolfman, penciled by George Perez, inked by Dick Giordano, lettered by John Costanza, and colored by Anthony Tollin. So let's get into it. So, as usual, let's start with the cover. The cover shows a handful of our heroes. We've got Earth 2 Superman, Earth 1 Dawnstar, we've got Kamandi, we've got Obsidian from Earth 1, we've got... Or actually, no, Obsidian, sorry, it's from Earth 2. Earth 2, we've got Firebrand from the past of Earth 2, we've got, Salavar from Earth 1 from Gorilla City, we have John Stewart Green Lantern, and we have Firestorm, and they are battling a giant one of the Shadows that we met in the first issue, but they are doing it on this sort of gold mechanical structure, and they're sort of it's implied that they are sort of vertical, like the machine is vertical, and obviously from the issue we'll learn that it is a big gold tower that they're kind of standing on, on the edge or on the perpendicular side to Earth. So like they're hanging from ropes or holding on to metal pieces, or the ones that are flying. And you can see in the background the Statue of Liberty, very reminiscent of the Statue of Liberty in the Planet of the Apes, the original one, where it's sort of the bottom half is gone, so it's just kind of sitting with the arms and the upper torso with the torch pointing up. It's a good cover. It's a good cover. Of course, George Perez and Dick Giordano, they draw good stuff. So let's get into the issue itself. We find ourselves at the dawn of man. Anthro crouches, staring over the ridge not far from the village of the Bear People. He waits. They are coming closer. What's coming closer, you may ask? It's a bunch of mammoths. But Anthro, being a cave boy, or actually caveman at this point, he's married, and I guess married isn't right, because the idea of marriage didn't exist in the Stone Age. Now, didn't exist until... When did it exist? That's a good question. Somebody who knows about marriage history should reach out and tell me, because I have no idea. But it has to be around when... Religion? I don't know. But he is dealing with this stampeding herd of mammoths. He wants to drive them. They're heading straight for the village of the Bear People, which I believe are his people, or maybe the Bear People are the bad people, his enemies. And he wants to steer the mammoths, which he calls serpent noses, away from his village and towards the Bear People's village to deal with them that way. And he's having a tough time. He's poking that lead mammoth in the head with his spear, and it's not really doing what he wants it to do. And the people in the village, his father Neon, N-E-A-H-N, and his wife, Anthro's wife Embra, are kind of talking about like, oh, he'll never do it. No, he will. I believe in him. You should believe in him too. He's your son, and if he fails, then I'll die, and so will your grandchild to be, because she's visibly pregnant in this sort of stretch of story. Eventually, Anthro is able to steer the mammoths away, and he's very excited. Everyone's excited. They're calling him a hero, and he's looking back and he's kind of raising his spear up, but he doesn't see a tree branch coming, and he gets walloped right in the face, and he falls off the serpent nose, otherwise known as a mammoth, and he kind of gets up and looks out through a bush, and he sees not a group of mammoths, but instead a gleaming, futuristic city, just sitting there like it's always been there. He quickly runs back to his tribe, to his village, and he brings them to come look at it, because it's the weirdest thing he's ever seen in his entire life. And when he brings them back, it's gone. It's no longer there. It's just an empty plain with maybe some hills and some mountains in the distance and some trees scattered about, but there's no city there. And they chalk it up to him hitting his head on that branch, because they all saw it. But then they all head back to the village except for one person, and he's like, "But what did happen to the serpent noses? Because they're not there anymore." So that's weird. On the next page, we do find out what happened to the mammoths. They were transported to the 30th century, 2985 to be specific, to the world and time of the Legion of Superheroes. And the Legion of Superheroes, a group of them, it's Dream Girl, Wildfire, Colossal Boy, Lightning Lass, and Chameleon Boy. They are all flying around looking for Dawnstar because Dawnstar has disappeared. Obviously, she is with the rest of the Crisis on Infinite Earths team on the Monitor satellite. So they're looking for her. They don't know where she's went. But they are interrupted by this stampeding herd of mammoths going through downtown Metropolis. So they cut off their search short and they go to deal with them. And basically the way they're going to deal with them is Chameleon Boy is going to turn into a mammoth, lead them towards Colossal Boy, who's just going to pick him up. He's going to turn colossal and he's just going to pick him up. But before he can, they disappear into thin air. And everyone's shocked. They're like, where is it? Where did it go? And they're like, maybe Brainiac 5 will know. And Brainiac 5 has been sort of running point from the Legion headquarters. And he says, forget the mammoths and Dawnstar, at least for now. We've got serious problems. My computers detect high-intensity frequency waves on the alpha-omega scale. There's antimatter energy moving toward the Earth from somewhere I still cannot determine. Enough energy to destroy not only us, but the universe. Bum, bum, bum. Antimatter. That's no joke. We then fade from the future into the present, which I guess at the present, even though this story itself comes out in February and the cover date is only May, inside the story it is July 1985. So it is the future. Obviously we know that it is the future in DC Comics universe because in just a few pages we'll find out some things about the Flash and obviously Dawnstar and Brainiac 5 aren't on Earth in the current Legion stories. They're on a different planet, the Theocracy planet that we read about, I believe, last episode. But we cut to the present, and we cut to the mansion of Harold J. Standish III, or more specifically, his heirs, because he is dead. We cut inside, and it is the Joker has killed the final living heir of Harold J. Standish. Oh wait, no. I guess he just killed Harold J. Standish III. Okay. And now the mansion belongs to his heirs. Gotcha. All right. Okay. We're all on the same page now. And basically this was a plot by the Joker to get a hold of silent comedy films. Think of Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. That was Burton. Buster Keaton, those kinds of movies. And so he wants them because they're going to be worth a lot of money because they've just gone through a coloration process, which you don't need that. Black and white is a very cool and interesting medium for films. I love a black and white film. I really, really do. Sometimes more than color. I don't know why. It just is. And then the Joker says he always has seen himself as a movie mogul, like a movie mogul in the making. He wants to be like Louis B. Mayer or Cecil B. DeMille, and then he says both the Warner Brothers, which is a incorrect fact because there's actually 4 Warner Brothers who started the Warner Brothers company. Well, there's Jack, obviously, Jack Warner, the most well-known, but then there's also Harry, Albert, and Sam, and they were all very, very pivotal to the rise of Warner Brothers, the studio, during the golden age of Hollywood. So I just want to point that out to Marv Wolfman, that there was actually 4 Warner Brothers, and erasing 2 of them isn't cool. But as he's saying this, Batman jumps in, and he has a good line. He says, only movie you'll ever make, Joker, is the sequel to The Prisoner, which I like to call The Prisoner 2, Electric Boogaloo. And Joker says, oh, how'd you decipher my clue? Even I was stumped, and I wrote it. And Batman, of course, being the world's greatest detective, said it wasn't that hard. The Last Victim's appointment book mentioned a Mr. John Alden of Plymouth Fall Films, and a $25 million movie to be called Captain's Hill, which happens to be where Miles Standish was buried, and that obviously led me to his only living descendant, Harry J. Standish III. That's a lot of leaps of logic there. to me, but I guess Batman is smarter than me. Always has been. The Joker uses his trick flower to shoot some glue or paste at Batman, kind of sticking him up. He can't move properly. When suddenly, out of a strange pink portal comes the Flash. And the Flash is looking haggard. His suit looks to be about 2 sizes too big for him. And he says, "Help me! Help someone, anyone, please!" And Batman's thinking, the Flash? But he disappeared. And there's a editor's note that says, "See the Flash number 350 for details." Now, if you are a frequent listener of this Friday show, the Crisis Show, you'll know that the most recent issue of the Flash that we've covered is 344. As I've said, Crisis on Infinite Earths takes place after the current material being published. So, 350 is a very, very important issue for the Flash. Spoiler alert for comics that are now going on like almost 20 years old. The Flash disappears in 350. It's the final issue of the Flash before it's rebooted at number 1. I won't say anything else, but he disappears into the future with Iris, who we find out some really silly stuff about. That's kind of dumb, I will say. So Batman is using this distraction of the Flash to reach for some solvent in his belt. The Joker says a line of, "No fair, Speedster, your town's central city. Tell him, Batman, he has no jurisdiction here." Like any of them have jurisdiction anywhere. They're basically everything that superheroes do is illegal. So there's really no jurisdiction now, is there? Batman gets the solvent out of his belt, throws a batarang at the Joker, knocking his gun out of his hand. And while Batman is distracted talking to the Flash, the Joker escapes. But that's not important. The talking to the Flash part is important. So Batman runs up to the Flash, and the Flash just says, "Please, can't you see the world? It's dying all around me. Iris! Iris!" And Batman is thinking, that image isn't the Joker's doing. He wouldn't know about Barry's late wife, Iris. So I guess Iris is dead. I don't think she is, though. I think they're just in the future. And Batman tries to ask Flash questions. He's like, where are you, Flash? I can help rescue you. And the Flash is just like, "Dying. The world is dying. Iris, dying. May already be dead. Save us. Save us. Save us." And the Flash disintegrates before Batman's eyes. And Batman says, "Dear God, what is happening?" And then we go to the title of this issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it is called Time and Time Again. And we get this really good, 2-page spread where we see all the important characters to the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the team, basically. We've got Psycho Pirate. We've got Firebrand. We've got Simon with a P at the beginning. We've got Blue Beetle. We've got Solovar. We've got Geoforce. We've got Firestorm and the new Killer Frost who's in love with him. We've got Superman from Earth 2. We've got Arian, Lord of Atlantis. We've got Dr. Polaris. We've got Obsidian of the Infinitors. We've got Cyborg of the Teen Titans. We've got Dawnstar of the Legion of Superheroes. And we've got Green Lantern John Stewart of the Green Lantern Corps. It's a stacked lineup, I'm not going to lie. And basically, the team, we're meeting the team right after the last issue, where they kind of fended off those shadows, and it was revealed who had brought them all here, and it is the Monitor. And Dr. Polaris reveals something that readers of, I think, basically most of the titles coming out before or during this time know the Monitor as a bad guy, like we saw in World's Finest, number 314, which we just covered. The Monitor has been masquerading as a buyer and seller of weapons and information to the villain underworld. And basically this was his way of sort of puppeteering, making sure that certain villains failed and or were hindered because Simon, with a P, who's a villain, he tried to buy weapons from the Monitor, but the Monitor said no. And the Monitor says that he turned him down because Simon's scheme would have endangered the very ones that the Monitor needed. So the team is kind of conflicted over whether or not they should trust the Monitor, because they all know him as a villain. Firestorm knows him as a villain. Dr. Polaris, Simon, they all know him as villains. But they're kind of conversing amongst themselves about whether or not they should trust him. And Lila turns into Harbinger because Monitor needs her to, and she basically says, you gotta stop it. You gotta believe, you gotta trust the Monitor. I've trusted him with my life. He's raised me from a baby. He knows what he's doing. And so they all agree tentatively to trust the Monitor. And the way they're going to sort of verify whether or not he's telling the truth is he is sending them off on, I believe, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, or sort of 7 teams. I don't know if there's that many. Let's see, how many was it? It's how many little thingies does he have? 5. So there's 5 crucial arrows throughout time and places that the Monitor has put his devices, powerful enough to stop the antimatter tide. So there's going to be 5 teams of these heroes and villains going out to protect these basically large towers, tuning forks, if you will, universal transdimensional tuning forks, basically, to protect them from the villain of our story, who I don't know if we've met yet. I can't remember. It's been several months since I read the first issue. So he sends off these 5 teams, and we see the Harbinger going to the Monitor's side, sort of, telling him to rest now, conserve his strength, while her inner monologue is conflicted because one of her, when she divided herself, if you remember, one of them was captured and sort of embedded with this dark energy. So she's now been infected with this dark energy, and she is being forced to do the bidding of some mysterious entity. We then cut to Oa. We see the Guardians of the Universe. They are just finding out about a powerful energy source coming to destroy the galaxies and possibly all dimensions. So they are going to call the entire Green Lantern Corps together to fight it. But they are stopped by a mysterious, unseen voice saying, "No, Guardians, it is too late. You shall no more summon your soldiers than prove a threat to my plans. What began with you so many centuries ago ends with you now." And we see this big noise. It goes, "Skra!" It's S-K-R-A-A-A-A-A-A. Skra! And there's a blast of energy, and we see all of the Guardians of the Universe laying on the ground in sort of disheveled poses. We then cut back to Metropolis, Earth 1. We see Superman of Earth 1 flying through the space and time. Nope, flying through just the regular air, not space and time. He is going to meet Batman on top of the Daily Planet because the Batman said he needed his help, and it was urgent, and it was on an emergency. And Batman then tells Superman about his run-in with the Flash. After telling Superman this story, Pariah shows up. If you remember who Pariah is, he is this man in I think a very well-designed, very cool green and yellow costume and black costume with a nice big green cape. He is pulled across time and space and dimensions to to witness destruction of these worlds for a crime that he committed in his past that we don't really know about yet. I believe we will learn about it in one of the issues of this series. And basically, Pariah says that, your Earth is dying, as so many other Earths have, because I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But mid sort of explanation to Batman and Superman, he is pulled away to another Earth to watch it die. So Batman says, he said the Earth was dying. That's what Flash said. What's going on here? Batman, that's what you got to figure out. We then cut to wherever Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, lives. And now it says, it is sometime in some future, in a timeline that at times stands between modern Earth and a 30th century which knows nothing of its existence. So, that is confusing because, it's not, it is a way, because at times Kamandi is in a universe all his own, but then at other times he meets people like Batman, and we see references to Superman. In Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth, there's a group of, I believe, gorillas that worship Superman's costume as sort of an idol. And Kamandi has met Batman in Brave and the Bold in previous issues. So at times he is in a universe all his own, and at times he is in the DC mainline universe, which is the confusing part, because if he is between the present and the future where the Legion of Superheroes is, that means that all of society and a giant percentage of humanity has been wiped out, but it recuperates enough to have super high-tech technology and communications with space and aliens and numerous different alien races living on Earth some point after the time that Kamandi lives. It's very confusing. I think Kamandi should be way in the future. Like in the Time Machine, H.G. Wells, the Time Machine, where he goes to like 10,000 AD. I think it should be something like that, like so far in the future that the Earth is, unrecognizable, which would cause the Statue of Liberty to not be able to be there, because I doubt that the Statue of Liberty will still be around in let's see, it's 2024, 10,008, around 8,000 years. I just don't think it'll be around. Maybe the French are that good, but I doubt it. So, sorry for that little tangent. It just was confusing when I read it, and I wanted you guys to also be confused. You're welcome. So we are in the time of Kamandi, the Last Boy on Earth, and he is climbing this large, gold, high-tech looking tower, which I will post a picture of it to the Instagram, so you guys can see it, so you can imagine what it looks like. It also will look recognizable from the cover, which I, of course, will also publish. And Kamandi is confused by this tower because he just came by this area like recently, and this wasn't here, but now it's suddenly here. So he's climbing it. He has attached a vine somehow really high up, and he's climbing it. And he is just confused about it. But he's exploring because, like, what else are you going to do? He doesn't have TV. He doesn't have Twitter or TikTok or Roblox, to whatever the kids are doing these days, to sort of waste his time away. So he's going to go explore this weird gold tower. When suddenly, one of the shadows that we've met previously cuts his vine by kind of popping out of this tower. And he starts to fall, and he's like, oh, he's going to die. His short life of, I don't know, how he's a boy. He's called a boy, so I'm going to say maybe 15. His 15 years flashed before his eyes. But Superman of Earth 2 grabs onto him and says, you're safe in my hands. And Kamandi says, Superman? See, Superman exists in this timeline. And this Superman is, of course, confused, because he's never met this boy, but this young boy has met the actual Superman, I think. So they, he grabs onto Kamandi, holds on to him, brings him to the tower so he can grab onto something. And he meets Solovar. So this team is Superman, Dawnstar, and Solovar. A pretty good team, I think. We've got strength and powers from Superman. We've got massive intelligence from Solovar, and we've got a lot of utility with Dawnstar with her tracking abilities and flight. She can fly. So that's a pretty good team, if I do say so. He has this, Kamandi and Solovar have this moment where Kamandi thinks that Solovar is one of Tsar Simeon's hired killers, because, as I said, this planet Earth has anthropomorphic animals, so they have like human intelligence and stuff, and they hunt human beings. But Solovar says, no, happily I am no such thing. I'm not even from your time period. And Kamandi mentions that his eyes are different from the other animals, warmer, more trusting, more human-like. When suddenly the group is attacked by another group of these shadows. So it was just the one, and now it's a whole group. So they fight him off. Kamandi gets burned on his shoulder by one, but they comment that these shadows are weaker than the ones that they fought on the Monitor satellite, so that's weird. And they quickly dispatch them. They sort of flee. These shadows flee away from the tower, and Dawnstar wants to go after them, but Solovar mentions that their duty is to protect this tower, not to leave it alone. So they stay there and they watch their tower. But in the distance, we see one of Harbinger's personas, one of her split off versions of herself, watching them and say, "Let them protect the machine. It will serve those fools no good. Their efforts will be rewarded with death." Because obviously, like I said, she's infected by a dark energy. We cut back to the Monitor satellite. Harbinger is going to check on the baby. You remember the baby from Earth Earth 3? The baby of Alex and Lois Luthor? So Lois Lane and Lex Luthor of Earth 3. Their little baby Alexander. I guess it would be Alexander Luthor Jr., wouldn't it? But she's shocked by something when she walks in there. And the reason she is shocked is because it's not a baby anymore. It's like maybe 4, maybe 5 years old. So it has aged. He has aged rapidly in the few hours since he's been here, since all of this has started. So that's weird. We then cut to Atlantis of Arian's time, so 40,000 years in the past. They are looking upon it, and one of the gold towers that we've seen is right smack dab in the middle of it. And it wasn't there before. Arian would know that. And this team is Arian, Obsidian, and Psychopirate. Psychopirate is sensing how many people are in Atlantis and how many emotions they have, because he is a little sicko and he loves emotions and loves eating them. Nom 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 nom. Says, "Oh, what a delicious morsel of emotion." Obsidian threatens Psychopirate that if he does anything with the emotions of these people, he's going to make him regret it. And Psychopirate's like, "Oh, I would never spread my madness here." And then to himself, he's like, "At least not for you to know, you stupid oaf." Which is like, rude. But the Psychopirate is a deranged criminal. So that's on brand. We see Arian they walk into Atlantis proper, and they are greeted by his lover and partner, Lady Chian. And so that's, we sort of met her when we summarized Arian, Lord of Atlantis, a couple episodes ago, maybe last episode. And Arian kind of explains a little bit about stuff, but not a lot, because he doesn't want to reveal anything. I don't know why. I'm assuming not to make people panic, but suddenly Obsidian taps him on the shoulder and says, "I can't find Psychopirate anywhere. Have you seen him?" And Arian says, "Well, no." We cut to Psychopirate sitting on a rock, minding his own business, kind of being a weirdo. He's like, "They won't let me feed on the emotions. It's no longer enough to change emotions. No, I gotta feed on them. I gotta take them from other people." When suddenly from behind him he senses terror. The sweet, manipulable. Is that a word? manipulable. 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 It just doesn't really sound right. Fear. And he turns around, and who is there but Pariah, who is constantly afraid all the time because of all the death he has to see. And Psychopirate is like, "Oh, what are you worried about, friend? You're in Atlantis." And Pariah's like, "Oh, Atlantis, Earth 1, 40,000 years before my last appearance," because he was just on Earth 1, if you remember, with Batman and Superman. And Psychopirate's like, "No sadness or worry around me, friend. Not when I need your feelings more than you do. So laugh, lighten up." And so Psychopirate, with his powers, makes a face of laughing, smiling, and causes Pariah to fall on the ground with laughter. He's busting a gut so bad. When suddenly Psychopirate is blasted from behind by some sort of energy, and we see Lord Arian behind him with a smoking fist, having just blasted him with magic. Psycho Pirate gets mad and forces everybody around him to experience terror, probably the terror he just took from Pariah. And Arian tries to protect himself with magic, but he's unable to. When Obsidian, thinking fast, realizes that the only reason he's being affected is because he can see Psycho Pirate's face. So he envelops Lord Arian in his shadow form so that he cannot see Psycho Pirate anymore. And on the outside of said shadow form, Lady Xian and the other Atlanteans are going to attack Psycho Pirate when suddenly a beam comes from the sky and blasts Psycho Pirate and transports him away. So that's not good, because that means that somebody just took Psycho Pirate. And we find Psycho Pirate in this completely black space. And he's being talked to by a voice saying, "Psycho Pirate, I need you." And Psycho Pirate, at first being who he is, he's like, "Well, I don't need you, and I don't even want you. Just show me your face, and I'll teach you the meaning of fear." And this voice says, "A fool, you would want a face without one of your own?" And we then suddenly see Psycho Pirate's face, and it's not there. It's just blank, very much like the question. It's, I have no mouth, but I must scream sort of situation. And this voice says, do what I want, and I'll give you your face back. And Psycho Pirate says, yes, of course, because he gives him his face back so he can answer. And he's like, without a way to express my emotions through his face, I guess, they would destroy him. So he doesn't ever want that to happen again. We then cut to the Monitor satellite, where Harbinger has just given him the news that they lost Psycho Pirate. He's been taken. And she's like, surely his powers aren't crucial. And Monitor's like, whoa, dear Lila, we needed him more than either Obsidian or Arian. The menace we deal with is one of emotion. And Harbinger says, well, then what about the empath called Raven? Raven from the Teen Titans. And Monitor says, I can find no trace of her. If she is on this earth, everything about her has been changed. Which sort of tracks, because we haven't seen Raven in either of the Teen Titans that we've covered since the beginning of the show. So maybe we'll find out. I think she's just like healing her wounds or recuperating from like a big battle with Trigun. I don't know, but she's not on Earth, I guess, at this point in time. This is obviously in the future. And the Monitor says, no, I fear we will have to forego this avenue and investigate another. Lila, my dear, get me the file on the new Dr. Light. It is time for me to create her. And this is actually really cool, because Dr. Light, if you've read anything like Identity Crisis, or just Justice League stuff, Dr. Light is a villain that manipulates light and is kind of an idiot, but also is because of Identity Crisis, a sexual predator. So this is the new Dr. Light, who is a lady and is a good guy. It's pretty cool. We then cut back to Atlantis, where basically Pariah explains that this world is going to be destroyed by antimatter, when suddenly one of the Atlanteans points up, and we see the all-white sort of force kind of waiting above Atlantis, and it's coming, and Pariah says, in a matter of hours, your Earth will die. And Arian and Obsidian are confused by this, because the Monitor said that if they protected these towers, that his machines would activate and protect the Earth. And Obsidian says, then the Monitor lied. He lied. And we see a tear roll out of Pariah's eye because he has to witness the destruction. We then cut back to the Monitor satellite, where Harbinger is sort of walking around and giving updates to the Monitor that the antimatter force has reached Earth 1, or the outskirts of Earth 1. And we see the Monitor standing at a console with like a headset on. He must be creating the new Dr. Light. Harbinger, or one of her split-off personas, is then called to a mysterious black room, or dark room, like completely devoid of light except for a window or a screen looking out on the antimatter force encroaching on Earth. And we learn that this is the bad guy. We don't know who he is yet. I mean, some of you probably know if you know anything about this series, or really the DC universe, but I won't say who it is. And this guy's basically telling Harbinger, like, there's no point in the Monitor doing anything because he's doomed. As always, he proves the incompetent fool for not accepting the inevitable. When I am done, all his universes shall be destroyed, while mine shall rule supreme. All your universes belong to us. Then we have this sort of speech that I'm going to read verbatim from the last page of this issue. Universe, this is the bad guy still. Universe after universe has fallen before my power. World after world is absorbed into one. Now, how many worlds do I now control? How many lives are now mine? We then we then shift over to the voice of the Monitor, either talking to himself or thinking. He says, Lila, I raised you. Lila is Harbinger, obviously. I raised you from childhood, yet even then I knew how it all would end. You were a child lost from the start, but I instilled within you hope. Find that hope, Lila. Call on it soon, for the darkest times are only hours away. Resist his temptations, Lila, through you, through the child from Earth 3, through the man who calls himself Pariah. Only through all of you and all my champions can the universes that still live survive. And that is the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths 2. Things are getting tense and very, very... The stakes are high. The stakes are very high. The stakes just smoked a huge blunt, and they are so high right now. So that's exciting. It's always great to get back to Crisis on Infinite Earths. So now I guess we'll just get there in, 10 more episodes. So episode 20, we'll get to Crisis on Infinite Earths 3. And that really doesn't bode well for how long it's going to take us to just cover a year in 1985. Because if it took us 10 to get, or I guess took us like 9 and a partial to get through all of them from 1 month, that means it's going to take us almost a month for each one. I mean, that's an entire year to cover a year. No. That's 120 episodes. That's way more than a year. That's 2? More than 2? That doesn't bode well, especially because I'm pretty sure new comics come out. Let me just look real quick. Let's see, Crisis on Infinite Earths number 2. Yes. Next week we have Dead Man number 1. And then the week after that we have Shadow War of Hawkman number 1. So new series are coming out, but hopefully not a bunch more. And if I'm looking ahead into the future, I think maybe not. I think those are the only 2 new ones starting. So that's good. That's really good. Because I don't need new ones throwing off the timeline. But I guess those 2 will. But I mean, Dead Man's cool, and Hawkman, you gotta love Hawkman. He's so confusing and weird. But that's Crisis on Infinite Earths number 2. Ignore all that sort of talk about how long it's going to take us to cover just 1985. So let's move on to the final issue of this episode. This is going to be a long one, folks. It's DC Comics Presents number 81, released February 7th, 1985, with a cover date of May 1985. And we have a couple debuts in this one. As I said at the top, this is going to be Ambush Bug and Superman taking on Cobra with a K. And so we have Ambush Bug and Cobra debuting. Ambush Bug debuted in DC Comics Presents, same one, number 52 on September 2nd, 1982. He was originally a villain, but became a hero a little bit under a year later in DC Comics Presents number 59, so about 7 months later. April 7th, 1983. And Ambush Bug is a very silly character. I know him mostly from during the New 52. There's those little like DC TV, like 52, like Channel 52, where him and Calendar Man and another lady kind of give news about what's going on in the New 52 universe. That's where I know him mostly from. But we also have Cobra, who debuted in Cobra number 1, November 13th, 1975, which is very interesting. I don't really think of villains as getting to debut in their own title. Like, we have titles like Harley Quinn and Deathstroke, and sometimes the Joker gets one, which he really shouldn't, for reasons of story and like what's up with these stories. But very rarely do they debut in their own series. They typically debut in a hero's title as a villain. So it's interesting. I think it's a 12. It might be like a 12-issue series, 13 maybe. It's not very long-lived, but I guess a year. But still, so he's a villain, snake-themed villain. But on the production side, we have plotted and penciled by Keith Giffen, the great Keith Giffen, scripted by Robert Loren Fleming, inked by Robert Oxner, lettered by Bill Pearson, and colored by Anthony Tollin. So let's get into it. So the cover of DC Comics Presents number 81 has Superman being just beaten up mercilessly by Cobra, who is an orange snake costume wearing guy with a green wrap around his body, like a toga sort of situation. And lots of stuff is on fire, and we see Ambush Bug running in from the background saying, "Your ordeal with Cobra is over, Soupy. I'll pull your fat out of the fire." So Ambush Bug is gonna save the day. He's gonna save Superman's life from Cobra. Just kidding, that's not what happens at all. So we start this issue out on a golf course. This Ambush Bug is basically Deadpool before Deadpool existed, and he's not super edgy though. Deadpool. Okay, yeah, of course it brings up the film. Bring me the character of Deadpool. Deadpool was created in February of 1991 or December of 1990. So this is about 5 years. I mean, Ambush Bug itself, 1983. So 7 years before Deadpool. So he breaks fourth wall. He is constantly making jokes. So we see a golfer, get hit by a golf ball, and someone off screen says Ford, which is not what you say. You say for, F-O-R-E, I believe. If you hit your golf ball towards someone. And we see DC Comics Presents Superman and Ambush Bug. And it says, "Who were you expecting? Lee Trevino." Which, let's see, who is Lee Trevino? Lee Trevino is an American professional golfer. That's a very good, okay. So he's not Lee Trevino. He is Ambush Bug. And then we see Ambush Bug driving Lee Trevino's golf cart. He's wearing the classic golfer's outfit, plaid pants, sweater, a plaid tartan hat, I guess is what it'd be called. And he says, "Darling, this is just too fun. No wonder all these rich tightwads like this game. I've been playing all afternoon, and it hasn't cost me a cent. And it's so relaxing. Those guys at the pro shop should try it. They were all so uptight, yelling and waving their fists in the air. Weird." Then we see the title of this issue is All This and Cobra 2, or Turning Kryptonese. I think I'm turning Kryptonese. I really think so. Or Tora, Tora, Tora. With a lot of titles. Some might say too many titles. We see Ambush Bug, and he is continuing to play golf, and he says, "I don't know why golfers always yell Ford when they hit the ball. I'll bet any make would do." And we see the next time he hits his ball, he says Mercedes-Benz, and it hits off a tree, and it splashes down into the water hazard. And he then says something about having taken a night course in CPR, and he's got on a snorkel and goggles, and so he goes underwater, and he's like talking the steps. He's talking through the steps of CPR, and then he lifts up his club and hits the ball from underwater. That's not typically what you do. You typically take a stroke and you move it back behind the water hazard. That's right. I grew up playing golf. I don't like it. It's a game I'm not good at. And he says Subaru this time when he hits it. And he gets it in the hole, which is, I think, something that no one else has done, hitting a ball from inside a water hazard into the hole. So that's cool. He's very excited. He got 100 on the very first game, and he's going to do even better on his second hole. So he got 100 strokes on the first hole, which I don't think is physically even possible, unless you're hitting it in the exact opposite direction. So he reaches for his ball in the hole, and It's not a Space Jam situation, but he does pull out a red rock instead of his golf ball. And he says it's not even signed by Arnold Palmer, who is a famous golfer, one of the best of all time. And he's like, what is this? Some sort of weird glowing gem. And then he has an idea. So he transports himself back into the pro shop, because that's Ambush Bug's power. He can basically teleport anywhere. He teleports himself back into the pro shop, and one of the golf pros is calling the police. He said he's broken 17 windows, injured 22 of our members, and now he's stolen Mr. Trevino's golf cart. And he's surrounded by a couple other people, and all of them have bandages on their head because they've been hit in the head by golf balls from Ambush Bug. And Ambush Bug appears and asks where he can find a jewelry store. And then off-screen, Ambush Bug gets beat up by all of these country club members, and he runs out. And then we see a guy who's smoking a cigarette, but in reality, the cigarette's a camera. And he's asking his boss, Cobra, if it's working. And Cobra says, yeah, of course it's working, you imbecile, but it'd be better if you had turned it the right way, so I'm not looking straight up your nose. We then cut to the jewelry store that Ambush Bug went to, and he gives the gem to the jeweler, and he says, it's for a friend. We had a falling out recently, and there's an editor's note that says Superman got mad at Ambush Bug in action number 565, which is one before we started this show. In the Ambush Bug backup, it's titled Sellout, featuring Ambush Bug of Earth 1. So... and the cover has Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman all staring mean or angrily at Ambush Bug. So Ambush Bug clearly did something involving selling out with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And the jeweler, shines up the stone and puts it in this nice necklace. So it's a nice big red stone in a gold necklace. And Ambush Bug then teleports himself to the Fortress of Solitude, where Superman is playing what he calls bombardment ball, which is where he tries to get a ball in a hole before it's hit by 2 missiles, which is like cool Superman. I guess you're Superman. And he's wearing a lead blindfold so that he can only use his other senses, when suddenly he yells out, "I can't see!" And then we cut to Ambush Bug, and he's standing there and he's like, "Great Krypton, how do I get out here? And who's doing all that screaming?" And we see Superman running around holding his eyes saying, "I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind, I'm blind." And Ambush's like, "Wow, it's me." And he holds up the necklace. And he's like, "How did I end up here holding this necklace made of red kryptonite?" And we see an editor's note that says, "Red kryptonite has bizarre effects on Superman, which may last for 48 hours. And so Superman's like, "What? Red kryptonite?" So he's realizing that he thinks it's a joke. But he realizes that he's been transported into the body of Ambush Bug and vice versa. So he yells at Ambush Bug. It's like, "Why would you bring me red kryptonite?" And Ambush Bug is like, "Well, it was a gift. Do you like it?" And Superman's like, "Sure, I did. I love it. Thank you very so much." Sarcasm, obviously. And he kind of gets mad at Ambush Bug. He's like, "What if someone needs me? What if there's a crisis in the next 48 hours? What if Superman's needed?" And Ambush Bug is like, "You're right. Superman is this living symbol, eternal truths, the very concept of justice and the belief in the American way." And so he's like, "Well, then I have to start pulling my weight, and so I'll do it." So he's going to do Superman stuff. So he says, "Up, up, and away," and he flies through the ceiling of the Fortress of Solitude, leaving Superman, in the Fortress of Solitude, where the 2 robots, like the robot guards of the Fortress of Solitude, think he's an intruder and put him in jail. We then see Ambush Bug traveling underground because he can't really fly very well. So he's kind of burrowing underground like some sort of groundhog towards Metropolis or Gotham. He's not really sure. It's kind of like in those Looney Tunes cartoons where Bugs Bunny kind of pops up and finds out where he is, and then he makes his decision where he's going to go, and then he goes that direction underground. So then we cut to 44 hours later. So there's only 4 hours left of the red kryptonite effect. So clearly nothing bad has happened in that time. That's good. We see Cobra, and he is kind of walking around being a real weirdo. He's not wearing his Cobra costume. He's still wearing his Cobra gloves, though, so he just looks like a bald guy, which, again, making bald guys the villain is mean. But give him hair. Like, there's way more people with hair than there are bald people. So, like, it's the odds that someone who is bald is a villain is much lower than the DC Comics universe would make you think. So he's kind of thinking to himself. It's like, yes, my power. His plan isn't really very straightforward. He just knows that he's gonna get power, and he's gonna find the ambush bug. I guess he must want the red kryptonite. I don't know. I don't know why he's going after ambush bug, but he goes to ambush bug's office because I guess he has one, and he opens the door and he's like, he says, "Insect, your hour is at hand, for it is I, Ko." And he's cut off, and then he says, "Ko," with a question mark at the end. And we see Superman's body with ambush bug inside it saying, "You're going to have to take a seat, Coco. I'll be with you in a minute." And he's having a conversation on the phone. And he's surrounded by Superman merch. Like, there's a Superman mug, there's a Fortress of Solitude paperweight, there's a Superman action figure, a Superman like stuffed doll, a Superman poster behind him. And he says, "No, I wasn't." And he's talking on the phone to Levitz, who I believe is Paul Levitz. I should have done this. Yeah, former president of DC Comics, Paul Levitz, is who he's current president at that time. But he's talking to Paul Levitz on the phone, and he says, "I wasn't talking to you, Levitz. What contract? Look, I don't care what I signed. You DC types are trading on my image, and from now on, I want to cut. Same to you, pal." And so obviously Cobra is shocked that Superman is sitting inside of ambush bug's office. And Superman turns to him and says, "I've got him on the run, Coco. I'm going to press for the great Frank Miller deal." And Ambush Bug says, "What? No, I don't care how many members there are in the Legion of Superheroes." And at this point in time, Cobra's like, "I got to get out of here. This is the Kryptonian. He's a heavy hitter, and I am but a man, Cobra. So I got to get out of here." And we hear Ambush Bug saying, "Come on, Levitz, quit stalling. I didn't call just to hear." "What? No, don't list him. Levitz, Matter Eater, lad." And Cobra is running away. He's like to his henchman. He's like, "Red alert, red alert, alert." And so Cobra escapes, and we continue to hear Ambush Bug say, "Wait a minute, I thought Bouncing Boy lost his powers." "Who? They did? He was? No kidding. In space? I can't believe it. And they got married? But who takes care of the kid? Her? But what about her husband?" He's as confused about the Legion of Superheroes as I am. And he's part of the DC Universe. And he says, "Hey, Coco, you're not going to believe this one. Remember that little blob guy named Proti?" And so the guy's gone. And Ambush Bug's like, he left in a hurry. And that bald head, where have I seen it before? He said his name was Coco. Initials KK. And KK comes right before LL. And Ambush Bug's like, "LL?" And he jumps through the ceiling of his office building and says, "Not so fast, Luther. This looks like a job for..." And then, of course, he doesn't know how to fly properly, so he falls back in to the building. And then he just runs after Cobra. And he catches up with him, obviously, because he's Superman, but he doesn't know how to stop. So he just continues running, and he starts running around the world. And he's like, "Stop the world, I want to get off," which, fair, Ambush Bug. We've all been there. We then cut back to the Fortress of Solitude, where Ambush Bug, with Superman's mind in his body, is in Fortress of Solitude jail. And he's like, "Hey, robots, I think I'm going to be sick." And one of them says, "Click, that is an old trick." And Superman says, "Fire." And one of them says, "Click, horse feathers." And Superman says, "You two better let me out of here right now, or..." And they say, "Click, or what?" And he says, or I'll be sorry." And Superman tries to figure out how Ambush Bug can teleport, but he just can't figure it out. And he's like, "Ugh, it's no use. I can't do it. It's not fair. I'm stuck here while that cretin is running amok." And at this point in time, Ambush Bug is running past the Fortress of Solitude, and he says, "I heard that." We then cut back to Cobra, and he is on Coney Island. He says he thinks Coney Island, the perfect place to make a stand. And then we see an editor's note from the editor, Julie Schwartz, who says, That's just what Nathan said. Ha ha ha. Get it? Stand. Hot dog stand. Ha 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 ha. So Nathan's hot dog stand. Coney Island is where every year there's the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. And Cobra thinks, first I'll kill the Kryptonian. Then I'll deal with that pun-drunk editor. So, breaking the fourth wall. So he's going to summon his Cobra Ark, which is his flying invisible ship, before the Kryptonian gets back. But Superman runs past, and he's like, oh no, he's here. Oh wait, he was here. And then he's like, oh, he's really moving quickly. He must be running around the world. When suddenly Superman does circle the world, or Ambush Bug circles the world, and collides with Cobra. And Cobra gets up and he's like, oh, here he comes again. I'm going to be ready this time. And he's going to shoot with his wrist torch, but his henchman did a bad job of loading it so it doesn't happen right away. But then it does. It goes skablam, 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 skablam. And he thinks that he's disintegrated Superman, but in reality, Superman just fell, or went up into the air, and then has fallen back down through the boardwalk of Coney Island. And Ambush Bug says, thanks for stopping me. I was getting wicked jet lag, which that's not how that works. And Cobra says, my name's not Bud. I'm Cobra. As you well know, Kryptonian, first you will die. And Ambush says, me? And then Cobra says, then I will defeat your fellow heroes, take over your nation, imprison its citizens, destroy their TV sets, burn their homes. And Ambush Bug says, destroy TV sets, you animal. And then his laser eyes, his heat vision goes off, and he sets fire to all of Coney Island. And Cobra's like, the Kryptonian's gone mad. He's destroyed this entire waterfront with an idle glance. I gotta get out of here. And Ambush Bug kind of gets himself, jumps up through the boardwalk again. His cape gets caught, and he's pulled back under. And Cobra then makes his escape back to or attempts to make his escape back to his Ark. And he says, come in, Ark, come in, Ark. This is Cobra. You have to get me out of here. Superman is buggy. And Ambush Bug says, gasp, he knows my secret identity. It's like, no, he doesn't. And the Ark appears, and Cobra is going to jump up into it, but behind him, Ambush Bug is digging through the ground, and we see this dun-da, 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 dun-da. And there's an editor note that says, to the tune of the Jaws theme, which is why I did it that way. And Cobra jumps up to jump into his Ark, but Ambush Bug, grabs his leg and is pulling him down. When we cut back to Superman in the prison watching television, and he's got this wicked headache. He can't stop watching this garbage television. When he's like, I can figure this out. I can figure out how to teleport. And he's just like, he strains. He goes, Sorry, that made me cough. That's hard on the body. And he just can't figure it out. And he's like, what does he do? Say Simon Says, when suddenly, pop, he teleports to the somewhere in the ocean. And he's like blubbing, flubbing, dubbing, glubbing, like they do on Looney Tunes. We cut back to Ambush Bug with Cobra, and Cobra's like, I'm sorry. And Ambush Bug's like, is that all you have to say for yourself? You're sorry? Well, all right, I'll let you go this time. But if I find out that you're not really sorry, are you aware that I could crush your skull like an eggshell? And Cobra's like, please don't crack my skull like an eggshell. And Superman says, pardon? Me? And we see Superman. He says, a great Krypton. The effects of the red kryptonite have worn off. I'm myself again. And Cobra's like, sure you are. Why, I was just saying to my men that Superman is really himself, isn't he? And they quickly beam him up before Superman turns vicious again. And Superman turns around and sees the entire waterfront of Coney Island ablaze. And he has to decide whether he's going to go after Cobra or deal with the fire. He's going to deal with the fire because he's Superman. We then cut to Ambush Bug, who is in the middle of, not the middle of the ocean, he's just off the coast of Coney Island, it appears. He's back in his body. And he's like, fire? But I think that's Soupy's weakness. Or is it wood? No, I think his weakness is the color yellow. Poor Soupy, with all those weaknesses, he's going to need help. Which, for reference, fire is Martian Manhunter's weakness. wood is original Green Lantern Alan Scott's weakness, and the color yellow is, at one point in time, I don't know if it is at this point in time, the weakness of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, and John Stewart, and Guy Gardner, and all those guys. So he teleports away to go back to Coney Island to save Superman from all these weaknesses. When Superman dives into the ocean, he's going to cause a big wave to splash the fire. And we see this commentation from, I don't know if it's from Ambush Bug or if it's just from some unknown source. It says, I guess it's from Wedge Fairway, coming to you from poolside. The Man of Steel looks very good going into his dive. His form is excellent, and his style is distinctive. And we see in the next panel, there's a row of scores, and there's Keith, Rob, Bob, Tony, Bill, and Julie, which are Keith Giffen, Robert Loren Fleming, Robert Oxner, Bill Pearson, Anthony Tollin, and Julie Schwartz. And it says, and he's done it. His total score for the dive, averaging the judges' marks and dropping the lowest score, is a record 9.8, beating the high score set by the Plutonian. And we then see Ambush Bug, and he is now a hardened World War II soldier, and he's going to fight that fire because it's he's going to kick its flaming tail because that's my job, and I don't like it, but somebody has to do it, so it might as well be me. I've seen horror. I'm battle-hardened. I'm a tough-talking, Nazi-stalking, war-hawking. And behind him is a giant wave, and he turns around and he says, Mommy. And then we see a splash. We see the word splash. It's S-P-L-A-A-S-H, exclamation point. And this is where it has the credits of the comic. It says, Superman and Ambush Bug was proudly plotted by Keith Giffen, lovingly penciled by Keith Giffen, adoringly dialogued by Robert Loren Fleming, admiringly inked by Bob Oxner, sentimentally colored by Anthony Tollin, sweetly lettered by Bill Pearson, and hardly edited by Julie Schwartz. And then Ambush Bug cuts in and says, just a cotton pickin' minute, which is a terrible phrase you shouldn't really use. There's only one A in splash. And it says, so what's your big problem? The credits are always on the splash page. Get it? Superman then flies down and is like, oh, I didn't see, Ambush Bug standing there. I hope until it was too late. If there's anything that's happened to me, I don't know. And then Ambush Bug is like dangling from a piece of wood. And he's like, oh, big man, Mr. Take Charge. Other people have powers, It wouldn't hurt you to share a little of the glory, Mr. Limelight. You could show a bit of vulnerability, a chink in the armor, one itty-bitty human imperfection. But no, that would make you common like the rest of us. I'm so sorry we humans can't live up to your high standards. Go ahead and laugh, but I'll tell you one thing. Nobody likes a wise guy. So at this point in time, Superman is cracking up. And so Ambush Bug teleports away. With the final saying, alien. And Superman's laughing. He's like, he forgot his pants. And he's laughing. Ha, 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 ha. We then cut to the final panel, which is Cobra in his Cobra arc flying away. He says, the Kryptonian got me so confused. I, Cobra, have been chattering like a pompous... And then he says, ASS. And then he says, lackeys, plot a course out of the DC universe. And that's the end of a very silly issue of DC Comics Presents with Superman and Ambush Bug. And that's also going to do it for a not super silly episode of Issue by Issue Crisis. I hope you enjoyed it. It's nice to be back in the saddle. I really feel it when I take time off for whatever reason, that getting back in the saddle feels really, really good. But as usual, check us out on the socials. They're all in the show notes, Instagram, Twitter, Threads. I do my best to be on top of those. Go out, rate and review, tell your friends, tell your enemies. It helps the show. All that podcast jazz. But I've kept you long enough, so I will see you on Monday for Issue by Issue Golden Age. Until then, I am your host, Nick Byers. See you around.